Everyone to the Old-Timers Comic Book Show. I'm your host, Johnny Machine Hughes. Getting ready for Crimbo. Yes. Joining me, as always, on the Old-Timers, we have the Professor.
Hey, what's up, Johnny?
Well, it's Christmas. It's Christmas!
Close enough.
As the song pretty much goes. And, of course, it wouldn't be Christmas without our own little Grinch, and he's the 13th Crusader filling that role admirably.
Buenos días y feliz Navidad.
Feliz Navidad, senor. There you go. Check me out. I'm getting it. All right, so last time we looked at if you were buying a Christmas present for someone to get them into comic books, what would you buy? All right, and that was an interesting question. So this time it seems only fair in that we talk about, the cheese on toast that is Christmas comic books. Yeah. Does anything ever happen that's in a cheesy Christmas book? I don't know. Do we have any also rans? That is the question. There's an old 13th. You might be able to help me out on this one. What's the backup story in Detective Comics where they're singing Christmas carols with Batman? What's that?
I don't remember.
The Grinch Strikes Back. Well,
Marvel used to do holiday specials every year.
Right.
And, they used to have all kinds of Santa Claus stuff. Though I remember there's one story with Santa Claus facing off against the Illuminati. And Santa Claus had like an infinity gauntlet or infinity gems or something. I thought it was the reindeers turned out to be Skrulls or something like that.
Sounds like an episode of Fantastic Four.
It was a pretty weird issue. My also ran was Uncanny X-Men number 143, which was the issue titled Demon. And it took place on Christmas Eve when all the X-Men went home for the holidays and left Kitty Pryde alone in the X mansion, and she ended up having to fight off a demon invasion alone. Do you remember that issue? It was John Byrne and Chris Claremont.
I'm not sure I remember the issue, but I'm sure I've seen the movie. Isn't that the plot for Home Alone?
But this predated Home Alone by quite a few years, actually.
See, normally Claremont's the one there borrowing from things like Alien and whatnot for his brood, and obviously the Avengers TV show for the Hellfire Club. And now you look at this, he's actually created something and predated something. Isn't that good? It wouldn't have Home Alone if it wasn't for Chris Claremont. I knew there's a reason why I don't like the guy. All right. Okay, so enough shenanigans. Let's get on with it. First up is the Professors, and I've got to say, this was an absolute barnstormer. I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed this.
It was a good pick, wasn't it?
Absolutely, the bee's knees. This is Superman Volume 2, number 64, from February 1992 is the publication date. So just a quick shout onto this. Christmas issues don't always happen in December.
Very true.
So bear that in mind. eBay, you can get this for as little as £3.69. Seems like a strange price to pay, but hey ho. Go Collect have no price on this book. So I guess that means nobody's bought it through the Go Collect service. Written by, probably, and I know 13th agrees with me, one of the most underrated Superman writers of all time, Dan Jurgens.
Yep.
Art by Jackson Hughes. Colors, Glenn Whitmore, and John Costanza is on letters, as he was on pretty much everything DC at the time. This is the Professor's choice. Take it away, sir.
Yeah, so we're talking about Christmas, Christmas in comics and what feels more like Christmas than what happens around Christmas time with Superman. And when just reading this book, and when we had this idea, this book I immediately popped into my head. I know we were talking about it, and I was like, oh, it's going to be a Superman book, but I can't remember what issue it was. So I had to go searching for it. This book this story is titled Metropolis Mailbag, and if you remember, that's the name of the letters column, I think, in one of the Superman books back then.
Is it?
Do you remember?
Cool.
So this book actually really shows us a day in the life of Superman on Christmas Eve, or it was actually December 23rd, right? So he shows up at the Metropolis post office to pick up his mail for the year, and he brings Lois with him to kind of give Lois the kind of like the report, so that she can write something for Christmas, some kind of Christmassy story. And you could see, like, I think it was like the second or third page, that they had the room full of mail for the entire year. And now Superman's talking and saying, you know, this is all the mail that I get from around the world in every single language that you can think of, all addressed to Superman. But you know, they don't have an address for me, so the post office holds the mail. So then he ends up showing Lois a little bit of what people write to him, and a lot of it is what you would expect, right? You know, I have a business venture for you. I want you to beat this guy up. I want you to, you know, all different kinds of stuff. And then every once in a while he'll hit on like one of those touching stories. I know in this issue you get, you know, he gets a letter from a woman. An Auschwitz survivor, thought she was the only survivor of family, but she found out that she had a sister that survived and lives in Germany, but they're both old and sick, and they didn't have the means to travel. So Superman stops what he's doing. He flies to pick her up and brings her to Germany to meet her sister who's dying. And that's just the start of this book. And it's one of those things that it's kind of touching, right? Because that's what people want, is they make those wishes on Christmas, and Superman does everything he can to make these wishes come true. And then the second part, when he gets to one of these next letters about someone whose dad died. Well, he flies out to see the family, and the father had passed away, and so he had gotten there just a little bit late, and he was supposed to be he was going to fly there and tell the little boy that there was nothing he could do to save his dad, you know. But you know, just kind of put a little arm around the guy, and you know, give him a little consolation, but happens to show up right when the father passed. So, you know, understandably, the little boy is very upset, doesn't want to talk to Superman, and pretty much tells him to go fly a kite. And you know, that's really where you kind of get that the root of Superman, right? Where he just says, you know, I'm not a doctor. And the kid says, no, you're Superman. And he comes back and says, no, I'm Superman. And there are many things I can't do. And to me, that really hit me, especially when I read this. And I was probably this kid's age when I read it. And it really kind of, that affected me when I read this. And I was like, this is really one of the best Superman stories I ever read. And then you find out at the end, he ties this into another one of the letters that he got, where a woman was looking for a heart transplant. And so, you know, of course, as chance would have it, the father that passed away was a perfect match for an organ donor. And this woman ends up with his heart at the end of the story. And that's a really, the thing I could tell about the story is that it had a lot of heart. You know? And it just made me just, when rereading this story, they don't write them like this anymore.
No, that's true. And
you know, I'm not really gonna say anything about the last page, because it really doesn't tie into anything that happened in this story. It was just you know, him getting a wedding invitation to someone else's wedding, for Lana's wedding. So this is actually pre Lois finding out that Superman was Clark, right? So that was
I thought this was around that time.
It might have been around the time, but I think that was the feeling that I got was because I think he felt way a little more unsettled about getting a wedding invitation from Lana,
Mm,
because I kind of feel like she didn't know yet.
yeah.
So
Okay.
so I mean I could be wrong, but that yeah,
Just
this
checking it
story.
now. Yeah. Sorry. Um, Action Comics 662 from 91. So this is was Lois finding out, according to the good old Google there. So this is a year after that.
Oh, okay. So yeah,
Yeah.
okay, I'm wrong.
Yeah. Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Merry
that's my
Christmas. Wrong again.
that's my present to you. We're going to demote you from professor to just regular tutor.
Well, in my defense, this is a DC book, so.
Oh, this is DC. Wait,
No,
listen.
no, no. I'm just saying. Not as much of a professor on the DC
I'm
side,
joking. It's fine.
but
It's Christmas. I'll let
this
you off.
this book, this book, bar none, is my favorite Christmas story.
Cool. It's a good. You know what? I read this now. I thought it was a really nice little story. I like the whole idea of the reindeer and Santa. I thought that was canny. I thought the pathos for the kid whose dad died. I thought that was great, and then they went and spoilt it by doing the coincidental stuff. I would have. I might be a bit of a Grinch on this, but I think the story works better.
It's Christmas. It's a time for miracles, and that was
whatever.
a little Christmas miracle.
13th. Who's right?
Oh.
You're the vote splitter on this one. Is it too coinky dinky? Would it have made a better story if the heart wasn't an exact match to a letter he'd already read?
Well, it is comics. Anything can happen.
Oh, okay.
So you can't have two tragedies in one issue.
Correct.
Oh no, I'm not saying it was a tragedy. I'm saying fair enough. Giving it as a transplant is a good call. It doesn't have to tie in to something else within the story. It's too saccharine. It's too much for me. But hey,
Well, hey, continuity within a comic. No, who would have thought?
Well, we've never heard that before. All right, so 13th. What was your take on this?
Well, I'll start with the art, and quite honestly, I haven't read this issue in years, but I'll start with the art. And honestly, like whenever I read a Dan Jurgens story, I prefer, that's just my personal preference, that he draws it. But
I'm
it's a
with you
lot.
on
It's a
this.
lot of work.
I'm
And
with you on this.
yeah, and
Definitely.
back in these days, Dan Jurgens was holding it down for Metropolis without question.
Yeah.
And so again, it's a lot of work. So Jackson Guys, yeah, he does the job. And I think where he excels is his art with Lois. And I think that's key when you're doing Superman books, because over the years you've seen Lois with all these different looks and whatnot. And here, he kind of modernized her a little bit, at least with the fashion sense of the 90s. So that was cool, but still kept her face intact, and the expressions are important and everything like that. I think on the inking part or the finishing part may be a little heavy in some places. It's almost too dark.
Agreed.
And I think that kind of detracts, especially from like Superman, right? Like, I think it detracts from his physique if you have too much ink in there, right? So this is my opinion.
Good.
As far as the story is concerned, Dan Jurgens again held it down for many, many years with all of the Superman titles. Just very instrumental. He is an unsung hero in the pages of Superman. There's no doubt about it. And a story like this, I agree 1,000,000%. Like what you guys said, it just doesn't. You don't see this anymore. And one of the things I mentioned several shows ago about writing Superman, you don't always have to have a villain or create somebody that's stronger than Superman or put him in a position where he's supposed to be omnipotent and whatnot. That's not what Superman is. The guys that know how to write Superman always go out there to demonstrate how his ideals and values benefit society. That's what Superman really is all about. And this is a perfect proof of that, where people have struggles and they look at Superman kind of like a god or someone that can bail them out of a tough situation. But at the end of the day, he's not. And he is not omnipotent. He's not a god. He is super, but that's as far as it goes. You know, he can take on heavy hitting villains and whatnot and save the day, but there are just certain things that he can't do. And this is a reminder for the fans that Superman isn't omnipotent.
He
And
can't
I
save
think,
everybody.
and that's the
I
moral of
don't
the
think
story here.
I don't think we'd want him to, would we? Because, you know, I agree. I think Superman works best when he has that human moment. One of the issues that Bud brought up many shows ago was the wife beating storyline, and that was another fantastic story. But again, it's the human element, it's the man element, not the super element that makes
Right.
it
And
interesting.
I think that's where modern day writers struggle. You know, they
Mm.
look at Superman and go, oh, he's too powerful. How can we possibly write a good
Mm.
story for Superman? Well, here's yet another example of when we talk about Superman, how he's not here, you know, moving a planet back into orbit or not knocking Darkseid back to Apocalypse.
Mm.
This is something that in the story he admits it's tough for him because his nature, the way he was brought up, was to help as many people as possible, and he just can't do it all.
Good call. And I agree wholeheartedly with both of you on this one. Art-wise, I think the art is inconsistent when it comes to Superman. I'll give you Geist the kudos for Lois, but in fairness, Superman goes from being super broad to not so broad. Look at his legs on that top panel, the like spindly little things. You know, then he's like not so broad. Then he's square jawed. Then he's. I mean,
When he walks into the
yeah.
mailroom, that's a perfect example where he looks like the high school version of Spider-Man. The physique.
How can that Superman in that top panel there still be that same one in the middle one there? It just does not compute. The mailroom, you said, yeah?
Yeah, the mailroom. Yeah, it's pretty much in the beginning. So
let's have a look. Those legs on that panel are awful, also.
yeah, right there.
I would say back in the early '90s, this was the triangle era of Superman.
Yes,
right? Where Superman was, we were getting a weekly dose of Superman with 4 different titles with 4 different creative teams, and he did look different from issue to issue.
Right.
And the storylines continued, right? So it wasn't like Spider-Man where you had like 3 separate books that were running different storylines, right? Superman was running one big long storyline, and you were getting it weekly, and that was another thing that kind of took you out of that.
Agreed.
Was the art team switching up every issue?
Yeah.
So I totally get the inconsistency of a Superman.
But for A Christmas Story, I read this, and no word of a lie. When I was finished, I had a stupid grin on my face. So
yeah, it tugs at your heartstrings. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I know I am being super critical. That's super critical, not super critical. But you get the point. No, good choice. Good start for sure on that bad
Thank you,
boy.
John.
Yeah, good call. Really enjoyed that one. Right, we'll take a quick break for one of our other shows. Unfortunately, I don't have anything that's Christmas related. However, why don't you check out this show? Because the latest episode will have dropped the day before this one. Go check it out. Prize podcast featuring this guy over there.
Hey, me.
And this guy, as we talk about the MCU, Marvel Comics, and Disney Plus. Although this time around, there's a distinct lack of MCU and Disney Plus.
Hey, what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
You have weeks like that.
Disney minus.
Yeah, Disney minus. You know what we should do? You know what we should do on the Ol'Timers? We should go back and look at some of those old cartoon shows on Disney Plus. like the Spider-Woman cartoon. That'd be cool.
Mhm.
That'd be cool. All right. An idea for another show down the line. Next up is the Grinch. I mean, the 13th choice. And it's a classic. Another strong book. This is Brave and the Bold, number 184, Batman and the Huntress from March 82. So this is our oldest book that we're looking at this time around. eBay, you can get this for around $5. Go collect. A 9.6 will cost you $26. A 9 will cost you $20. So I actually own this issue. It's probably around a 6 or a 7. So
Not bad.
So it's written by Mike W. Barr, art by the Batman artist Jim Aparo, colors by Adrian Roy, letters also by Jim Aparo. I did not know he was a letterer, but there you go. Okay, 13th. This was your choice. So, what was brave and bold about this book?
Everything. So, again, this is another holiday story here featuring Batman, but what I love the most about it is the Helena Wayne Huntress, and then teaming up with the Earth 2 Bruce Wayne Batman. What's not to like about that? You guys know how much I love the Huntress of Earth 2 and Earth 2 in general. So this is a kind of a glimpse into Helena Wayne coming over to Earth 1 to visit Batman, right? So on Earth 2, her dad, who was Batman, had died. So she considers Bruce Wayne of Earth 1 her uncle in a way, which
Uncle
I thought
Bruce.
was kind of Uncle Bruce, exactly. So the thing of the story here is basically Bruce Wayne uncovers what he thinks or perceived was criminal activity that was performed by his father, financing the underground, the mobsters, and that throws him for a loop. And he starts questioning, should I even be Batman? Because everything I did was kind of hypocritical to what I believed in. But Helena Wayne's here to kind of steer him back on track a little bit and help him finish the case, to try to see it through and remember that his parents really were, he held them with the utmost respect and honor, and that was maintained. I'm not going to go too much into the story. The art here with Jim Aparo, I mean, one of the greatest Batman artists ever. The cover, it starts off right with the cover. There's no surprise here. You know, you're going to know that the Huntress is in here, the Brave and the Bold. This is what they excelled at with these team ups with Batman. I wish there were more of these stories, to be honest, with the Helena Wayne Huntress and Batman, especially around this time. There was a joke that I had, and I know I mentioned this on a previous episode as well, that I had with Joe Staten when I met him. That I said, "Hey, look, you know, to me, Earth 2 really should have been Earth 1," and that's how much I like the Earth 2 mythos. And you know, this Huntress. Again, it's like when I read this, it just really, really takes me back to this era of Batman and Jim Aparo, how he master of angles, if you will, from them just standing in a room to them swinging across town. I think his art excelled in this issue when you have close-ups of the Huntress, and again, it's I can't say anything more about Jim Aparo's art. You will take a trip back down memory lane with the Huntress and her background with her parents, Bruce Wayne and Selena Kyle of Earth 2, the tragedy that occurred when her mother died, and then Bruce Wayne of that world saw that, and how traumatizing that was for her. So for her to relate to the Bruce Wayne of this Earth, you know, they kind of shared that pain of losing both parents. And I think that's what was important here. And despite all the losses and what have you, I think the moral of this story is like, hey, you know, remember the good times, and you know, keep the memory going. Don't let it get you down. You know, try to use that to kind of keep going. I would say. So I think that was important here for this book.
Okay. Why does anyone know why they revamped the Huntress to make it Helena Bertinelli? Does anyone know the answer to that, or is it lost to the eons of time.
There was the post-crisis thing, right? When they merged.
Yeah,
One of them.
there was a crisis.
You know, you couldn't make her Bruce's daughter, right? You had to do something different.
I think all of that applies because around the crisis time, that obviously turned everything on its head. And with the Huntress here afterwards, you know, that they brought her back as Helena Bertinelli, but that was also kind of a more of an adult book than the campy version of the Helena Wayne Huntress. And as usual, when you're talking DC, it could get confusing very, very fast. You know, a team up like this with Earth 1 and Earth 2, like even in the beginning pages here, it's like in the multiverse, there's two Earths. We know that to not be true anymore.
Well,
there's
say
a
that.
whole bunch. Yeah, now there's a whole bunch in comics.
Indeed,
So I think it's a mixed bag of all of that.
The Helena Wayne has made a triumphant return in the current Justice Society book from DC. So check it out if you're into your new books. All right, okay, cool.
I just want to say one more thing.
Shoot.
On the last page, I absolutely love the Merry Christmas from the DC staff with everybody's autograph there. I thought that was a very nice touch by the people at DC at the time.
Cool. Good call. Right. So, Professor, we've looked at a number of Brave and the Bold issues in the past.
Sure.
How's this stack up?
It's above the board for the other books that we've looked at from Brave and the Bold, I think. Jim Apato's art immediately propels this to A-list status. I think with, when you're thinking Christmas, I wouldn't necessarily put Batman on the list of happy Christmas stories, or that I would expect to see. I would expect to see like a Batman story would be that those times for missing the people you don't have with you, but always remembering the family that you do have around you for Christmas. That's kind of the feeling that I got from this issue with Huntress, where she doesn't have her Bruce anymore, but she goes to see the Earth 2 Bruce, just to kind of see. It's almost like the family, the family that you still have with you, that you're thankful for being around. But I don't really have a lot more to say about the issue, but
okay, cool.
Yeah, it's Jim Aparo, it should be everybody's collection.
So the idea that Thomas Wayne was up to no good isn't a new idea. We've seen it from this point. We've seen it numerous times where he was up to no good, or he's got an affair going on, or whatever. I like the idea that he's just a stand-up guy, and something bad happened to him, and that's what created the Batman. For fans of continuity, this page really rocks because you've got an allusion there towards the current run in Batman and Detective, because Gordon's on the way out. There's Hamilton Hill's going to come in. He's going to fire Gordon. He's going to put a target on Batman's back and all that sort of stuff, which is happening over there. Which is kind of like, for me, a bit of a renaissance piece for Batman. I really like that era. The Jim Aparo art, I absolutely love Jim Aparo. He is my Batman by far, and I will brook no one saying anything bad about him.
Tell me how often you see Batman with a smile on his face.
I don't know. It's Christmas.
Yeah, it's Christmas. I like that. I like that panel just because he's gonna grin.
That said, I'm not sure he's great at drawing female figures. I would like to see, he's a little bit angular, I suppose, for that, but it is of his style, it works. When I look at Aparo, I'm looking at things like shoulders, arms, physique, hands. He's probably up there with Steve Ditko for the way that he draws hands and how emotive their hands can be. And if you think I'm talking rubbish, I mean, his hands are always doing something. They're not just there. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, Ditko obviously had the chance with Spider-Man and his web shooters and Doc Strange and his, spell casting. But every time you see a hand by a pyro, it's doing something. It's not just stood there at the end of his arm, which seems like a daft thing to say, but people forget how expressive people talk with the hands. So I think it's a fair use of it in a comic book style.
So he's hands on then.
Sorry?
He's hands on.
Hands on, yeah, hands down.
Yeah.
Brave and the Bold as a concept, you guys know I love that as well. Some of them were cheesy, some of them didn't quite work. Like, oh look, Batman's back with Sergeant Rock in World War II. How did that happen? He ends up with commanding the last human and all that sort of stuff. You're like, what? When did this happen? But when you keep it on the down low, when you keep it on the kind of this street level, I think it works so much better. Definitely. Yeah. Nothing wrong with this book at all. In fact, as I said, I own it. Love it, love it, love it.
I like his backgrounds too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the angle. It almost carries an angle of like the 66 Batman show.
Yeah.
In some panels. Especially when you're looking at building backgrounds and whatnot. It kind of gives it adds to the art of like if Batman is swinging around, you kind of swinging around with him to keep up. And I think that's very powerful for Batman. This is something that he's done time and time again. And to Johnny's point, that he tried to pull that with the Huntress as well. But again, you don't see this kind of a team up that often for Batman, and that's what I loved about it. You don't just see a Batman and Helena Wayne team up for their own dedicated story. So I kind of liked that it's self-contained.
Yeah.
I mean, what more can you ask for?
Well, don't have to tell it to me, man. As I say, I own this book. So there you go. It's over. Where's Bees? Batman. It's probably over there now, over in that bookcase over there. Crazy. Cool. Excellent. 2 down. 1 to go. And what a peach. I think you'll agree that I have managed to choose. Yes? Normally my choice is a little bit out there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah? I think I managed to stay on point this time.
I think that you're correct.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Such high praise. All right. It is our only Marvel book of the show. And surprisingly, I picked it. What's that all about? This is Amazing Spider-Man 314 from April 89. eBay, this will cost you anywhere between £9.75 and £95.
Wow.
I know. I'm going to collect a grade 9 will cost you $28 and a grade 9.6, $90. There you go. Crazy. I always get his name wrong. It's written by David Michaelini.
Yeah.
Oh, that was close. Art by Todd McFarlane. Letters by Rick Parker. Colors by Bob Sharon. Before I get really into this book, because it is a classic, there is just one thing before I get really into it that I want to talk about. And it is the simple, let's see if I can find it dead quick. Where is it at? He says talking. There you go.
That's the best I was going to say that's the best Todd McFarlane Spider-Man. I think he's drawn on a panel.
That I was reading this book and I was thinking to myself, yeah, it's all right. Yeah, it's a bit Christmassy. Yeah, I can see family and all the usual Christmas shenanigans. I turn the page and I'm greeted by this panel, and at which point my mouth went, because you forget how good McFarlane could absolutely be when it came down to that shot. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. But
that's the best panel in the book, hands down.
Yeah. Cool. 13th, you agree?
No qualms from me.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Okay. So story-wise, pretty much as you can see, Spider-Man's getting evicted. Ho ho no. Yes, he is. So he's getting evicted because the building that that he lives in with MJ is owned by some dude who keeps trying to stalk, hit on MJ. When MJ rebuffs him, he sells the building out from under them, and tough, you're going to have to move out. At which point, there's a dead easy solution: move back in with me. But Peter, being Peter, has a little bit of a pride issue going on. To him, that feels like a step backwards. At the time, May's house is a boarding house. There's a whole slew of characters in there. And pretty much this issue is Peter going around trying to find alternative digs, because he's already told May that he has them. So he does what he needs to do. He goes to talk to Flash. He swings around. There's an odd Spider-Man pose, as you'd expect. Does the Spider-Man stuff. Eventually comes out with the idea that, you know what, moving in with May would be perfect, and that's what they end up doing. It is pretty much an easygoing Spider-Man book when you think of the run that Michaelini and McFarlane were on at this point in time, because this book was fire for ages, right until probably till he left and Eric Larson took over. But you know, it's funny, you talked about how Geis 13th gave Lois a distinct look and modernized her. Didn't McFarlane do the same with MJ, do you think?
Without a doubt.
Yeah, she's now no straight hair there. She's got the Bouffant style going on. The McFarlane art is gorgeous, loads of facial details. Of course, you know he's going to end up looking at Ben Parker's grave. And of course, that's where stuff goes down. We've seen this since this point. There's that fantastic panel again. And then pretty much, I like the shading on his head here. The bright light taking away the webs. I think that's really cool. A sweet Peter and May Parker moment, which is always cool. And then lo and behold, everything's back together. They're back in the boarding house. This is a massive point because you know down the line, Christy is going to have some serious issues down the line. She's got a bit of a crush on Peter. She's going to have bulimia. So this is kind of the start of her little segue. That gets played out more in Web of Spider-Man than it does anywhere else. So, I mean, the professor was right. The Spider books were separate books, but there was a little bit of carryover in the subplots behind the scenes, which made them fun. But yeah, I absolutely thought this was a cracker. I'm not going to lie. I thought, I'll be honest with you, I picked it because it had Santa Claus on the cover.
I was like, that's worth mentioning too. All three of these books had Santa Claus in them at some point or another, whether or not it was Superman carrying him through the city, or it was him dressed up as a bad guy in Batman. And this one where it's mall Santa or sidewalk Santa.
So yeah, I was like, I need a book. 13th picked one of the ones I was thinking of. Thanks.
You're welcome.
So I was like, Christmas books, and this came up. I was like, let's go to Spider. It's got Santa on. Yes, I'll do this. And then the charm of it just won me over. Back in the day, I was buying Amazing Spider-Man. When this first came out, I was buying all three Spider books. I was buying the 2 Bat books because those were Batman and Detective with Legends coming out not long after. So this was one of my go-to books, definitely. But this feeds, Professor, we'll go to you next on this one. This feeds into my love of Spider-Man, or I should say it feeds into my love of Peter Parker. Because this is about Peter Parker, not Spider-Man, really.
It's, the greatest Peter Parker stories are the ones that play off his supporting cast as other aspects of his personality, really. Because I really kind of feel like all the characters in this book are kind of like pieces of his conscience telling him stuff, whether it's J. Jonah Jameson or Flash or MJ or Aunt May. And I really love the different aspects of this book. Like when like he goes to, say, hey, Flash, can we shack up with you? And Flash says, oh, hey, I've been living in a room in the back of here, but hey, you know what? Take my room. I'll stay at the Y. And I was just like, that, to me, when you think of how Flash was at the beginning of Spider-Man series 30 years before this, you never think that Flash would be that kind of a person that would give you the shirt off his back. And that's really kind of what character development does, and brings that to the fore of how far Flash has come as a character. J. Jonah Jameson, same old J. Jonah, right? Especially in this issue. But the biggest relationship, even between not even Peter and MJ, it's Peter and Aunt May, right? Because Peter's motivation here is just like any 20-something-year-old that has been on his own for a few years. Nobody wants to move back in with their mother figure, and definitely feels like he's moving backwards, especially, if you feel like he's made progress. We got married, he's moved on with his life. Now he's got his own family, and now he's forced with the prospect of moving back into home where he grew up. And I mean, for someone that had been in that situation for myself, I was reading that thinking, wow, that was kind of a powerful thing. But then at the end, where of course, Uncle Ben brings him back to zero, and kind of resets him and makes him realize what's important. And what can you want from a holiday issue than to kind of make you feel all warm and fuzzy at the end? So
I just want to bring up something that you're just interested before we go over the 13th.
Sure.
You mentioned that it is a step backwards for Peter Parker. Do you feel that that's a bit of a trope when it comes to Spider-Man books? Because how many times does he start at ESU and he's either a student or he's a teacher, or he works at the Bugle, but then he works at, there always seems to be a reoccurrence down the line in Peter's life. I don't know if that's, I know comic books are circular to start with, but it always seems that those two aspects he's always around orbit around those two.
There's two things that have to happen in a Spider-Man comic. Is Peter Parker's life has to be in the shitter, but something, excuse my French, but something always happens, something good happens, right? So you get one good thing that makes everything better by the end of the issue, but he could have 17 different bad things going on. So that's how you feel like when you read it. You're like, that's me. Spider-Man's the everyman character, right? Agreed. So when you read about that, you have to read about the bad stuff. You can't just be Superman where everything's great all the time, right? So to me, this is a really good storytelling issue of Spider-Man, and just happens to come with some really good Todd McFarlane art.
Just so happens. All right, excellent, good shout. 13th. Do you agree with Professor? Professor mentioned there that the key relationship in Peter Parker's life is him and May Parker. Could you argue that the main relationship is actually him and Ben Parker?
I would argue with this point, the relationship is with himself, the guilt,
right.
The guilt of losing Ben Parker. So both are important to him, obviously, but it's the guilt that drives him, and the lesson that he still learns every day. Right? He knows that with great power comes great responsibility, but he learned that in the hardest way. But it's every day. That's what makes the world of Spider-Man go around. That's how I look at it. But yeah, Paul Abdul said it best: 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. Right?
I ain't dancing. If you're singing, I ain't dancing.
With this issue again, the McFarlane era of Spider-Man, it's memorable. A lot of collectors still go after this run that he worked on. This is pre-Spawn. There's some panels in here that you may see similarities with Spawn later on, especially with Peter Parker in a cemetery. Certain poses of Spider-Man, even the facial expressions. These are all things that McFarlane would carry with him to Image
Mhm.
later on. But with his Mary Jane, without a doubt, he definitely kind of reinvented Mary Jane for the modern times, kind of like what we said earlier.
Mm.
And that's not easy to do,
Mhm.
considering that John Romita, if you remember, when Mary Jane had to debut,
Mhm.
she had to be drop dead gorgeous. There was a lot of pressure on him to produce a character that was mentioned
Mhm.
several times in Spider-Man lore, and then one day there she is at the door. So I felt like that was a big Mary Jane moment. But then also with the McFarlane era,
Mhm.
there's not many panels that he, where it's lackluster with her.
Mm.
It's definitely some sort of pose, whether it's a close up, like it's Mary Jane. It became iconic at this time.
Mm.
Um, I know you guys mentioned the panel with Spider-Man on the ground in the snow, but
Mhm.
one of the other panels that I enjoyed, other than Peter overlooking Ben Parker's grave, was when he nabs the purse snatcher in the park, and he webs him in between two trees.
That one.
Yes, I was very impressed with that panel. Just to
Mhm.
have it's almost cartoonish in a way. So there's incredible artwork and detail in here to kind of draw a figure there
Mm.
in midair, get all the webbing, the trees, and then just Spider-Man just hanging out.
See, I like that. You're right. It's a gorgeous panel. I would have liked Spider-Man to be stuck on the tree.
Hmm.
I've said this to Bud a million times. If Spider-Man's got his feet planted on the floor, you are wasting a huge aspect of the character.
And maybe that's why he did it. He knew that you didn't like it.
Maybe.
Well, the top
Damn you,
panel,
McFarlane! Damn
the
you to
top,
hell!
the top panel there is fine, except you're
Yeah,
wondering what he's hanging from. But
Hmm.
yeah. I see. I was going to say that because if you do that, then you're going to go back to the Brave and the Bold book and find out how Huntress and Batman are swinging in a line like that, as opposed to, but
Hmm.
comic book physics and all that, right?
yeah,
And one of the things also I admire about McFarlane is if you go a little bit further, Machine, when they're at the holiday party and Peter's wondering, who should I ask
Mhm.
if I could crash? The fact that the panel went down to where he was even slightly considering asking J. Jonah Jameson is
Mhm.
hilarious. But it like this page in itself, it's animated and there's humor in it.
Mm.
And that's what I think, that the art is very important for this. So yeah, you have to script this, but the art is very important because it kind of led to the punch for the
Mm.
joke. Was Peter that desperate that to the point where he would ask his boss if he could
Mm.
crash at his place with his wife? So I thought that was hilarious.
Mhm.
Um, and then lastly, I think that at the end of the book, where everything's great, the family gets together and everybody's celebrating, and then the Marvel team says Merry Christmas everyone, and then
Mhm.
oh yeah, Venom's next issue.
Yeah.
So
Happy New Year!
yes, like see you next year.
Yeah.
I thought that was like, oh boy, because I remember this era of Spider-Man. I was getting this off the newsstand
Mhm.
at the time, and no one could get enough of McFarlane.
yeah.
So if you're in the camp of, oh, a Christmas story, oh, there's not going to be a major villain, or whatever complaints you may have had, don't worry, they're going to fix that, and there's
Mhm.
your reward at the end if you stuck it through here. But
Mm.
at the end of the day, it was still a good story, and the moral of the story again is, Peter is always struggling
Mm.
with that tremendous loss of Ben Parker. It
Mm.
weighs heavy on him, and as Bud said earlier, he's an adult now. He's got his life going, or trying to get his life going. He's got other responsibilities. And
Excuse
for
me.
each new responsibility he takes on, this one just always challenges him, and it can
Mhm.
even lead him to make bad decisions
Mhm.
with ramifications not just for himself, but for others as well.
Cool. Good
And
shout.
that to me is the crux of Peter Parker.
There you go. Excellent. 3 Christmas tales for your merriment to enjoy with eggnog and whatnot. 2023 is around the corner. So we know the show is based on comics that are 25 years or older. So that means come next year, the magic year is 1998.
Mm.
Did
Really?
anything? Yeah, yeah. That's 25 years back. Unless my maths is wrong.
No,
No,
I think you're right.
cool. I'm just going to say spelling might be different in America, but surely maths is still maths, right?
Depends on which Earth you're from.
Yeah, I suppose. So we have another year to play with come 2023. I'm sure 98 brought up some interesting ideas. We'll get a chance to look at them. Professor,
Yes.
thank you so much for the year. I really appreciate you being on the show and
thank you,
spreading
John.
your wisdom.
I appreciate you being on my show too.
Cool. It's our show, yes. 13th, I appreciate you being on the show. This year, I know it's been, we've had tricky times with schedules and stuff, but we managed. We got there.
Yeah.
We made it through.
All good.
Yeah, all good. Anyone got any back issues or any kind of Christmas hopes and dreams coming their way come Santa Claus?
I bought my son a bunch of stuff because my son has started getting into some DC comics, Johnny.
Oh no! What are you going to do? Is he adopted?
Well, he's buying some of those big omnibus books.
All right, yeah.
And he bought the Flashpoint omnibus, and he also bought Snyder and Capullo's Batman omnibus volume 1 with the Court of Owls.
Yeah.
And he's been enjoying the hell out of that. And actually on his Christmas list was a bunch of other omnibuses, which I was more than happy to plug in some holes for him. So I got him some Jeff Johns Flash and Green Lantern and some of the stuff that he's really wanted to read. But Grant Morrison's run on Batman as well. So
that's a good run, the Grant Morrison stuff. Greg Capullo, Pooh Man's Todd McFarlane.
I would say so.
Well, I mean, especially, the hand-picked successor on Spawn.
Yeah.
But I preferred his work on Quasar. But
Oh yeah, remember? Yeah, we looked at a book, didn't we?
Kind of cut his teeth on Quasar.
It's funny because I should have mentioned it when we talked about Amazing Spider-Man. McFarlane ended up being the house style for Spider-Man for ages, didn't he? You had like the old school artists like Sal Buscema and Al Saviak trying to draw Spider-Man in odd poses, and the web was spaghetti web and not the usual stuff. So McFarlane had a huge impact on Spider-Man, not just from that.
Well, starting with McFarlane, that was really kind of the beginning of all the Image artists, right? Where you had Lee and
Lee Liefeld.
Yep, everybody came around the same time. And but out of all the books, Spider-Man launched the careers of McFarlane and then Eric Larson right after that, and then Mark Bagley right after that. So it's that's 3 heavy hitters right there.
And Spider-Man had some very memorable artists, like Gene Colan, Ross Andrew. This is other than Romita, and they were kind of like the Spider-Man of their day. But McFarlane to come and out of nowhere, really, and kind of supplant that art and make this very memorable is an amazing accomplishment.
Agreed, absolutely. 13th, do you have any back issues on your Christmas list?
Oh yeah, and you're not gonna like it.
Oh,
I promise
really?
you.
Go on,
yeah, I'm going back.
NFL Super Pro.
No. No.
Champions.
I got those. I'm actually going after some old Squadron Supreme stuff.
I mean, why would I not like that?
Okay, just making sure.
What exactly are you looking for?
It's kind of like the mini series, the in betweens, like later on with Squadron. So I have the original run. I think the volume 1, volume 2, whatever the 19-issue run was, or whatever, or Supreme, whatever it's called, Supreme something. But
okay.
Yeah.
I like how you really
the Max
put a lot.
series.
Okay.
Yeah, the Max series. Yeah.
I like how you really put a lot of effort into this because it's called Supreme something. Yeah, great. Well done.
Oh yeah, it's on my list. I don't have it yet. Once I have it, then I know. But then also there's some Grendel stuff that I'm trying to look for.
See, that doesn't. I'm not impressed by that. See. I am going for the first appearance. Is it Deathbird? Is that what they call her from Miss Marvel? Issue 16, 17.
Yep.
That's what I'm going for this Christmas. There you go.
That's Byrne, right? No,
Nope,
Claremont.
Claremont.
Yeah, Claremont was on that run. Yeah.
So I think I've only got 4 gaps in that run of Miss Marvel. Number 1 at 16, 17. I think I've got maybe 18. I'm not sure about that. I'll have to check. But that's where I'm at.
I completed that run last year, and the first Mystique was really the one that was very hard to find.
Which number's the first Mystique?
So as Raven Darkholme, if I'm not mistaken, is 16, and then 18 as Mystique.
All right.
So 18 was the one that was really gave me a hard time. Yep.
Yeah. So that's where I'm heading. That's where I'm gonna try and pick that up this week.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck.
Yeah, I know where there is one. There's in my local comic shop, the Dial Knights. So I'll just send them a text and double check he's still got it, and they'll put it on one side for me, and I'll go and get it. Oh, booyah. That's my Christmas present, me. All right, there you go. 3 up, 3 down. We've talked about Christmas. Next time around, New Year comes into play. 1998. We have some shenanigans around that, I'm sure. All that's left for me to say is I wish everybody a very merry, happy, safe Christmas. Enjoy the time with your friends, your family. I hope you've been fantastically good and get everything that's on your Santa's list. Professor, 13th, the show wouldn't be the same without you. You guys make this. So, guys, happy holidays. Have a great Christmas, and we will see you in the new year.
Thanks, Johnny.
What
You as
about
well.
Feliz Navidad?
Feliz Navidad. And with that, don't forget to check out UCPN for all your favorite shows, including Professor.
The No Prize Podcast, all about the Marvel Universe, the MCU, Disney Plus, and we do manage to talk about some comic books.
And there is a special Christmas edition of the Definitive Crusade dropping between Christmas and New Year if you haven't had enough of your fill of comic books. It's all about the year that was 2022 with the guys picking their best books of the year. And yes, it still lasts an hour before the professor says it'll be a short show.
I'm full of one-liners.
Yeah, my Christmas spirit has been drunk, it seems. All right, okay, we're done. We're out of here. Gentlemen, adios.
Peace.